let's see. Let me read the short paragraph intro to it. Each of these precepts, when explored through application and contemplation, yield the experience that human beings are able to express these various innate capacities. We realize that we are sharing a profoundly fundamental human experience when we connect to these capacities, these virtues of the one Dharma Kshetra, field of the Dharma, that is our life and our environment, as expressed through our activities of body, speech, and mind. In other words, our conduct, right? Through precept training, we may recognize our true situation, and that is that we are immersed in the Dharma Kshetra, the field of Dharma. Right? That's the other thing about it. If we follow our precepts, we start to really open into a very open-ended relationship and rapport with greater nature, the Dharma, the Tao, and start to realize, oh, this actually is a form of nourishment. So this is something I want to add that we usually don't talk about. I'm glad it occurred spontaneously here, because when you follow here a precept, it's controlling your life force energy, looking for a good result, but usually squishing it. It's going to make you a bit dry. When you follow precepts, you're nourishing yourself. You're creating a rapport with your own nature and a congruency between your own nature and the larger nature. In the same way you'd eat some good organic food out of your garden over here that we have here at Permacultureville, you know, you will also imbibe energy that is just like food to your soul. You create this deeper relationship. Yeah? That's quite beautiful. This there's an opening line in Bhagavad Gita, Dharma Kshetra Kuru Kshetra. It's the most powerful opening line pretty much of any text I know of. It says, Dharma Kshetra, the field of the Dharma, Kuru Kshetra, is the battlefield. The field of the Dharma is the battlefield. Not to use a martial analogy here. What it's trying to say is the everyday activity of your life. That's the field of the Dharma. The field of the Dharma is not just when you're meditating. The field of the Dharma is not just when you're reading a high text or something. But where it really comes out is Kurukshetra, right? The field of the Kurus, where the Bhagavad Gita, the battle of the Gita was about to occur. Where cousins were about to launch themselves against cousins, nephews against uncles, uncles against nieces. It was crazy. It represents the most crazy kind of war possible, unavoidable, because no one tried to avoid it all the way along. They made all the wrong choices. Now they're at this consequence where it has to happen. So life itself, Kurukshetra, represented by this battlefield, symbolized by this battlefield. Life is where we really find the Dharma, the field of Dharma. You know, because you can see how easy this is. Someone can sit around all peaceful in a meditation retreat hut for years. And then they get into the Kurukshetra, the battlefield, and you know, go buy something at 7-Eleven, you're screaming at the person. I came out of an 18-month retreat and thought I was holier than God itself, and then I flew to New York to be with my brother. I flew to caretake for my brother who had just gotten HIV, or just diagnosed with HIV, and was very sick. My brother and my mother picked me up at the airport, you know, and I'm holding tight. Within a half hour, my brother and I are actually punching each other, just as we always did. And I was like, and I just freaked out. About 30 seconds into it, I went, 18 months retreat, I'm fighting my HIV raging brother. What am I thinking? Oh my God, you know, I'm here to help him and I'm beating him up, you know. Yeah, that's the Kurukshetra. Doesn't mean squat, diddly squat, if it doesn't come out in your everyday, every moment conduct to every being, right? So that's why you see the fruit of the path, the whole enlightenment. Look, that's why that's in that category. Not really here. Very interesting. So if I had a little magic marker and I had a really long arm, I'd say, view, I could draw like this. View is fruit. So people talk about the highest tantric realization. What's the highest path? What's the highest tantra? Is it, you know, Anupaya Tantra from the Shakya Shaiva? Is it Dzogchen from the Vajrayana Tibetan Buddhists? Is it, you know, whatever? Those are just words. The highest is when your view and your conduct are seamlessly matched. When you seamlessly express the view through your conduct. When no one can find a hole in there and you can't find a hole in there, you're there, basically. You don't have to worry, you're twice born. It's irreversible enlightenment at that point, and it just gets better from there. Understand? So that's how view and conduct are really the same thing in the higher practices. Okay. Are we ready? Mm-hmm. following are the foundation precepts of our path. Is it 9 what? I can't see, there's so much light on my eyeballs in here.
13.
13, thanks. Hope you guys can see me out there because I can't see anything. So here we go. These are not in order of importance. These are not in order of importance. That's important. Okay? First precept, precept of dharmic view. Precept of dharmic view, and it rolls like this. Keep the dharmic view as your friend. See, your teacher can't be around you all the time. You're new in the teachings, you can't remember all the teachings. Your body, speech, and mind haven't been programmed into the Dharma strong enough yet that their first reaction to things is dharmic, right? So keep the dharmic view as your friend. I would, in my mind, roll through Dharma precepts constantly, especially in the heavy days of my, early training with Swamiji. I would just be rolling it through constantly. And I would constantly be saying, how would Swamiji be in this situation? How would Swamiji meet this situation? How would and it's something I learned from the Christians, actually, from the Jesuits way back when. It's how would Jesus meet this situation? What would Jesus do it here? What would Jesus do? You know the famous thing? It's great, actually. Great practice. Fantastic. So what would Swamiji do here? What would he do here? Now, I had a crazy wisdom guru, so sometimes it's kind of hard to sort out. He did left hook a guy on the ashram lawn one time and knock him out. So you can't exactly take a Chogyam Trungpa or a Swami Satyananda at pure face value and say, what would you do in this situation? I had to feel the essence of what he is, essence of what he's transmitting, and what he would do in that situation, right? So if you're from one of those lines, or you don't have a teacher and you like those books by Chogyam Trungpa and you hear about wild lifestyle he had, any other modern teachers that were like that? That were not self-made cuckoo people, but really from tradition? Not so much. A lot of people like to read Drukpa Kunleg stories about the guy from Bhutan and Tibet that would just go around and screw everything on 2 legs, and old ladies, sick people, whatever, you name it. And the villagers would be like beating him with sticks and throwing stones at him as he's pulling his pants up, running out of the hut. And you'd hear some old lady screaming from the hut. She was dying. There's one story, she's dying. She's like, don't beat him. I'm enlightened. That was his method of transmission. And she was like, oh, don't beat him. He's my teacher. I'm enlightened, Very funny. Anyway, so they can be kind of confusing to follow because they're trying to do somebody else's path when we try to be crazy, right? Some people have the path of being crazy. That's just them. But it can be dharmic. It's very rare, though. Very rare. So it's better we don't try to be something other than what we are, So the precept of dharmic view. Keep the dharmic view as your friend. Keep it close to your heart. Review it all the time. Let its beautiful fragrance waft up from the incense urn of your heart into your mind, and let your conduct come out in that beautiful way, expressing that and giving it to others. Just in that same example, very beautiful thing. In the ancient samurai tradition, you would keep the most expensive, most exquisite incense where? If you were a samurai. Do you know from living there? Did you learn about this?
In your folds of your robe?
Close. Keep it in your helmet. So that when your head came off, you gave a gift to your person of incense. Isn't that gorgeous? Oh. Gorgeous. Because you met a worthy opponent. Take refuge in your understanding of and implementation of the view. That's our refuge. I take refuge in, what do you take refuge in? I take refuge in the Buddha. Well, that's kind of good, but he's gone. I take refuge in the Sangha. Well, they're all kooky, so that's okay. You have to go through this realistically speaking. What am I going to really take refuge in? This is like in the Buddhist way of thinking about it. Say Tibetan Buddhist or Tantric Buddhism, Shingon from Japan or whatever. What am I really going to take refuge in? Your essence. You have to ultimately take refuge in your essence. Shakta Shaiva Dharma is saying you're taking refuge in the Guru, you take refuge in the Kula, you take refuge in the teachings, you take refuge in the deities, but you ultimately have to take refuge in your essence. And you take refuge in what aspect of essence? Your understanding of and implementation of the view. So you're reviewing the view. You're reviewing the view in your mind all the time, the precepts that come out of the view that say you should be a loving being, a beautiful being. That's what you take refuge in. That's what I do, I'll be very pragmatic. I'm a pragmatic teacher. I'm from New York and that's it. Either, right? Money walks, right? Bullshit talk. So this is the whole way it works. When you take refuge in your view, when you have that, when the shit hits the fan, you can say, whatever, I don't care how bad it's going. If I stick with the universal principles here, I'm going to come up smelling like roses eventually. I'm going to stick with honesty. I'm going to stick with love. I'm going to stick with compassion when I'm being assailed, when this is happening, when that's happening, when the chips are down, you know? The country's being invaded. I'm not going to harden my heart. When you're low on money, I'm not going to become non-generous. You stick with this. You take refuge in these precepts, in the Dharmic view in the precepts, and always you'll come up better. You just contract and forget. So this first one is quite important in this way. Take refuge in your understanding of and implementation of the view. Yeah, when I have nowhere to go, my back's up against the wall and everything looks bad, I really go right back to the precepts directly. And I just go, I'm not going to close down. I'm not going to close down. I'm just not going to do it. This situation is not going to make me close down. Quite like a story I tell you about when the monks are coming over the mountain, coming into Holiness's monastery. And I'm sitting there on the floor as they escape and walk in radiant and enlightened and so forth. And after the dialogue, Holiness tells us, oh, you know that guy, what he was saying? Because my Tibetan's not that good spoken-wise. He says, yeah, he's saying that he was tortured every day, a new bone broken every day, and they were peeling off his toenails once a day, and, you know, blah, 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 blah. And that's what got him enlightened. That's what got him enlightened. He said he wasn't doing so good in the practices in the monastery until he got tortured every day. Then it really got good. Because it forced him to take refuge in this thing and see that there's no outer situation that will take this away from me. So it made him go so deep into it that then it exploded back outwards and he loved all his tormentors. When you can love your tormentor, you're there. Just the same as you can sense a friend's company, sense your immersion in the Dharma Kshetra. So that field of action, that field of Dharma Kshetra, the field of dharmic activity. Sense yourself in the field of dharmic activity at all times. Think, am I acting with dharmic activity? In my guru yoga, you know, especially in our relation to our guru when we have that moment. Am I really putting their needs first? Or famous story Rudy tells, or Rudy's students tell, sorry, Rudy wouldn't say this, but Rudy, a great teacher, Swami Rudrananda from New York City, probably the first really highly realized American in the public eye, sent a new student out to get coffee for all the people working. So he had a big shop that would get antiques in from Asia, and they would unpack these crates once a month. Big shipments would come in. All the students would show up at the shop, unpack the crates, clean them all up, you know, clean the statues, get them ready for sale, put them in the right position. And they're big and heavy statues, a lot of them. So a lot of work had to be done. So big crews would be there. So he'd buy them all burgers and coffees and stuff like that. It was the 50s, you know, early 60s. So he sent this kid out for coffees to the corner shop across the street. Gives him $2. He'd probably buy, 40 coffees in those days with $2. And he's supposed to come back in a big brown paper bag carrying the coffees, right? So the kid comes back like a half hour later. You know, it's a 2-minute walk across, 2-minute back, 10 minutes to make the coffee max. Comes back a half hour later, and the bag's all torn. The coffee's been splashed all on the inside of the bag. It's all torn away, and they're all half full and stuff. And he gives him all the change all screwed up out of his hand. And Rudy just lays into him so heavily, just completely lays into him. And he's like, what kind of little mind do you have? No compassion, not caring for anybody else but yourself. Everyone here working hard. You go out there and take so long. They're waiting for the coffee. You know, he just really, really grilled this guy to death, you know, just really killed him. The same day, the teacher who taught me the Rudy work, one of Rudy's most important direct student, I think, in this case, his main heart inheritor, was helping Rudy lift a huge statue in a crate and move it. And Rudy was, 300 pounds of sumo wrestler, and this guy, Lair Short, was, by his own admission, a lollipop with hair on it. You know? He was a breatharian vegetarian stick when he met Rudy. You know, he was trying to be all like pure and stuff, and Rudy fattened him up. So he had no strength at all. So he's trying to lift this big thing, and he's like, Rudy, I can't hold it, and he drops it, and the statue cracks. You know, this is like the most expensive of the whole collection. Just came from Burma or something. It's like 20 grand. And he was like, because he's thinking, I saw what he did with the kid with the coffee. He's going to kill me, you know. He's like waiting, And he said, I was so scared and so skinny back then, only ate vegetables, so I couldn't handle anything. And he says, but instead Rudy looked at me and goes, that's okay, baby. That's okay, baby. Like that. And I said, wow, he didn't kill me. He didn't bite my head off. He didn't go crazy. Why is that? And later they were talking about it, and it was because, so he said, can I ask you something? This was like weeks later. He said, you killed the kid with the coffee, you know, you tore him a new butthole and I ruined your best statue. Like, what's up with that? He says, you were trying. It's like, you were trying. Big difference, right? That kid wasn't trying. You were just goofing off. You gave it everything you had. You're a little skinny vegetarian. That's the best you could do. It was really cute. See? So it's in this field of the Dharma we get tested, in the field actually. That's where it happens, right? Any question or comment on the first one, on the Dharma precept itself? Keep the Dharma as your spiritual friend. That's the best. The Kalyana Mitra should be the Dharma itself, the view itself. That's the first precept. Keep your view. Don't lose your view. Lose your view, you got nothing. Second precept is a precept of health cultivation. Cultivate good health. The foundation of all basic sanity practice is our daily routine, our dinacharya. In Sanskrit, dinacharya. Dinacharya, daily routine. Dinacharya. Acharaha. Conduct is called acharaha in Sanskrit. You know, how I conduct myself, acharaha. Your dinacharya, daily conduct, daily routine. So cultivate good health. The foundation of all basic sanity practice is our daily routine. If we don't have a daily health cultivating routine, the basic elements, the basic doshas, the wind, fire, and the water are going to be disturbed. And at this point, not being a fully realized being, our mind expresses the wind, fire, and water in their balanced and imbalanced states. So if we don't cultivate that continually in a very beautiful way that reflects nature, we're going to reflect an imbalanced state through our mind, our energy, and our conduct. So we must cultivate health as a priority. And actually in our tradition, that one never stops. You know the tradition of the big fat yogi that eats all the gulab jamuns, all the sweets, and gets really big and fat and chubby and cherubic and so on. You know, in our tantric tradition, you don't want to ever say what's good or bad, because there's no good or bad, but you have to kind of at least question for yourself, is there a continuing a cultivation of the health in that being's experience, or have they kind of given up on that? Okay? So we're a little bit of hard ass on that one point. We tend to see that our teachers go out pretty fit, basically, as they cultivated their whole life in that direction. Why would you change now? You see, why would you change now, right? So it's rhythmicity and appropriateness to time and environment, the dinacharya, the rhythmicity of the dinacharya, and the appropriateness of it to the time you're in, that means your age, the age of the planet, whatever, and the environment, produce harmony between ourselves and nature. So when we're cultivating our health in the proper cycles, in the proper rhythms, in the proper appropriate responses to our appetites, what is the appropriate response to an appetite of sexuality? What is the appropriate response to the appetite of food? What is the appropriate response to the appetite of sleep? Are we really sleeping because we were tired, or do we want to avoid life? You know? Are we sleeping a lot because we're overworking, which is also bad? You know, what's the appropriate appetite for these things? Is it a psychological urge, I want to have sexuality in this moment because I feel lonely? Or is it a natural, free, uprising, upsurging of union that's desired? It's clear and powerful union that's desired. And in the union itself, in the desire itself, it's self-fulfilling. It doesn't have compulsion. It doesn't leave a residue where it needs to be repeated. That's really fulfilling it. That's what we want to feel. That's what we want to know. That's what we're talking about, the appropriateness of the time and the environment of the situation coming to fruition. No new karmas are produced. So cultivating your health, you're basically trying to do karma therapy. You're trying to understand your appetites in such a way that they produce no new karmas. This is the inner, deepest level of understanding of these precepts. What if I tell you you got a vow not to eat meat? Does it make you more sensitive? Not necessarily at all. What if I tell you you have the vow to sense what you need to eat? Do you not have to look inside? Do you not have to examine your real desires versus what your religion or your culture tells you should eat and so on? It's much deeper. This is what we're talking about. Cultivating a daily routine based on cultivating your appropriate appetites, right? In that space and time, that environment. And for that, a system is useful. So the system that is a branch of our overarching Dharma system is called Ayurveda. And the version I teach of it is called primal Ayurveda. Because I'm trying to recalibrate it back to a time when it was more natural, before it got too much influence from Vedanta and Buddhism. Theravada Buddhism and Vedanta gave it a very transcendental feeling to it that got rid of mushrooms and got rid of meat and just said no to things as in good and bad, black and white, versus what do we need at this time in this space, you know. So we're trying to make it more sensible again. Okay? That's primal Ayurveda. So you can use that system. You could use a system like our friend Lu Ming's Taoist dietetics and things like that. Things that you could, that are very whole, that can bring you back into yourself. These are good ways of learning how to use foods and so forth as part of your daily cultivation, your dinacharya. What you don't want to do is make rules. Dairy is bad. It's not even a sensible statement. Dairy is bad. You know, meat is bad. These things just close down all your sensibility. Close down all your sensation. Alcohol is bad. Well, if it's bad, Ayurveda doesn't know what it's doing, because it lists 1 million alcohol preparations to drink for all kinds of things, right? Like the British drinking, the pregnant mothers drinking big stouts to have good milk and strong babies. Hasn't hurt them much. Same thing in Ayurveda. How could it be bad? Maybe we need a more open interpretation of when to have alcohol and when not, and what type, and for whom and when, right? So, dinacharya, just like spiritual work, comes down to one of the greatest overarching precepts above them all in Tantra, which is for whom and when. For whom and when. Keep that in your mind all the time. For whom and when. A Danish for me, fine. A Danish for my father, diabetic coma. You know, I mean, it's for whom and when. Do you understand? But knowing that I'm my father's son, the Danish for me is diabetic coma later in life. So I don't Danish. You know, you have to be thinking of time projection as well. Yeah? For whom and when. Everything for whom. Spiritual practice. I want the highest practice. Oh, Brian G., please give me the highest practice that you have in your system. And you say to me, why? You couldn't use it. Couldn't make use of it anyway. Oh yeah, okay. So, like in Tantra, the highest practice is the one that we really can make use of. That's the highest practice, right? So that's the same principle for whom and when, for whom and when.